Hello, and welcome to the GOfermentor weekly winery chat show. Hard to believe, but it's already episode 6. And here we are live from Far Hills, New Jersey on a beautiful May day, which is extremely cold outside. Strange weather, but here we are. By the way, what do you think of the haircut? Vacuum cleaner. Not bad. Anyway, so those of you know the format. I spend a few minutes talking about a book or something interesting that I think that you should be interested in as a winemaker. This gives time for people to get onto the show, catch up, whatever. And then I spend about 10 or 15 minutes over the topic. And today's topic is pressing. And then we're open for questions for 5-6 minutes. You can go via YouTube chat if you're logged in, or you can text your question into the number on the screen. And remember, there's a lag, but we will try to answer your questions as best as possible. Now remember, all the old episodes are archived on our website, so you can go back and see them later if you missed something. So let's talk about today's book. The book I'd like you to read today is written by Ronald Jackson, and this is kind of a serious winemaker book. Last week we did kind of a funny book, but this one is really something that every winemaker should have in his library. It covers everything. It starts with grapes, varietals, vineyard, growing, rootstocks, to harvesting conditions, to fermentation, post-fermentation, cellaring. It's even got sections on wine and health. It tells you, for example, the number of studies done to show how wine helps cardiovascular health, kidney stones. Apparently wine dissolves kidney stones better than anything else. So read this book. If you could read this book in entirety, you don't need to go to UC Davis course. This is the whole UC Davis course in one volume. And it's written in a really, really nice way. I think we're talking about pressing today. And this book has a small section on pressing. Here's a page from it. It's a little terse, but it goes over some of the issues involved with vertical, horizontal presses and so on. So it's really not a bad idea to read this section, or the whole book if possible. If you're stuck at home with nothing to do, this is what you should be doing. Anyway, so let's start our show today. So our tab today is going to be about pressing. And we call it Pressing Quick and Easy because we do it the GOfermentor way. So I'm going to talk about only red wine pressing. We're not going to do grape juice and white wine this time. We'll save that for a second session because it's a little bit of a special topic. Okay? So our main objective here is to collect the maximum wine from the fermentation, to squeeze the pumice so that any entrained wine is removed. We need to make sure it's hygienic, and we have to minimize oxidation during all this process. We all remember that the wine doesn't like air, especially not at this stage. So we're going to talk about some types of presses, advantages, disadvantages, yields, capital costs, labor, just a quick overview. Again, I'm going to be doing this very quickly for the time that we have, but hopefully you will learn something and you can do more later. So common presses. There's a ubiquitous basket press, right? There's a screw on top, you put the grapes in there, the must, and you screw down on it. The modern version is a bladder press, has a membrane in there, a bladder, and so the bladder can be pressurized with air or water, and it squeezes the wine out through the perforated drum on the outside. More sophisticated, you have horizontal bladder presses, where you have this thing turned on the side. The advantage is you have a lot more capacity and they're more automated. And finally, the Cadillac of presses, the closed bladder press. And these have been popular recently because there's been a lot of evidence that pressing in an inert atmosphere or a closed system gives a much fresher wine. Many compounds are oxidized instantly on exposure to air. So, but these are relatively new and quite large and expensive. So let's talk about some basic technologies, okay? The screw press goes back to 2 BC or whatever, and it basically is a screw system that compacts the must. It's very labor intensive because you need to fill it many times, empty it several times, and the quality is fair because the last fraction is often overpressed and the seeds are crushed, leading to bitterness. So end up with this sort of thing, you're ending up having to blend the wine. And also because it's an open operation, you get severe oxidation. However, the good side is that the cost is very inexpensive. $1,200 will get you a screw press. The next level up is a vertical bladder. And here you have what I showed you in the first slide is a bellows or a bladder that expands and crushes the must against a sieve. Quality is good, yields are satisfactory. Some of the end fractions can be very bitter, so they have to blend. And of course, it's an open operation, so you have severe oxidation. Cost is reasonable. $6,000 will buy you a nice stainless steel vertical bladder press. Then you go to the horizontal bladder. The advantage here is a large capacity, so you have to do very few cycles. You can load it up and basically do 1 ton in 1 pass. Quality is good, the yield is good. The last few fractions generally have to be discarded. Oxidation is moderate. Cost is fairly high. You're looking at $20,000 to $30,000 for a reasonable unit. Next level up is a closed bladder. Large capacity, few cycles, quality excellent, yields are good. Again, the last fractions sometimes have problems, but the beauty of this system is there's minimal oxidation. The cost, however, is very steep, $50,000 and up, depending on the size you're looking at. And of course, the operating costs of inert gas and so on. Then you have the GOfermentor. And again, here it's an automated cycle. There is no labor because the must is never removed from the fermentation liner. It's simply compacted by the pressurization of the second liner. The quality is excellent, as evidenced by the number of awards our wines have won and the number of awards our clients' wines have won. Now, there's one caveat. The yield is slightly lower. It will be about 2% lower than a hard press. So in a 160-gallon run from, say, a ton, you're about 2 gallons short. The nice thing is that this last amount is the worst wine. So the good wine, you get all of that. And the beauty of this also system is that you only collect 1 fraction. Since the entire fraction is always guaranteed to be very gently pressed, there's no need to collect different fractions and blend them back in later, saving you trouble, saving you having to deal with storage of different fractions. Since our system, go back please, since our system is completely closed, it's 1 bag going to a second bag liner, there is no oxidation in the system. So we get all the advantages of not oxidizing any of the phenol compounds and the tannins and colors. And of course the best part is it's free. The cost is 0 because it's built into the GOfermentor system. You get the press tube with the GOfermentor system, so you have basically a press at no cost. So again, let's look at some pictures just to make sure you remember what these presses look like. So the screw basket press, it goes back to Roman times. You hang onto a pole, you dance around with your feet, and the wine comes out the bottom into a collection chamber. Not very sanitary and oxidized and so forth, but then the wine in Roman times is pretty bad. Then you have the classic screw press. You have these staves and you squeeze the must through the staves. Modern version, stainless steel drum with perforations, screw. It's the same concept that's been there for centuries. Pressing is not fun. The man in this picture is smiling and laughing, but he does not get very happy later on because pressing is dirty, labor-intensive work. There's wine all over the place. It's got to clean all the containers, hoses, the winery from where all the splatters went. Not fun at all. So this is not anybody's favorite pastime in the winery. Now I'm going to go over some example of using the vertical bladder press, which is very common in this 1 to 3 ton processing range, macro bins, small tanks, versus the GOfermentor. So here is a typical pressing run done with a vertical bladder. The bladder is on this in this drum on the left side. The must is pumped into it. It's then allowed to pressurize. The wine comes out to the outside through the perforations, collected in that cylindrical or circular tray, goes to a pump over sump, and then they pump it, in this case, to a barrel for aging. So if you look at the system, it's actually a mess. You have air on the inside. You have this wine coming out, the perforation into the atmosphere. It's all being oxidized. It's collecting in this tray. It goes to this open pump over sump, contamination, insects, leaves falling in. Not the best thing, but the real problem here is the oxidation. In the GOfermentor, it's really a press setup because the press is built in. The wine is being fermented obviously in the fermentation part of the liner. We insert a perforated pressing tube, connect it to a pump, connect the pump to a collection liner, pump out the free run, and then pressurize that secondary chamber. So it expands and it squashes the pumice against the perforated tube and squeezes out the wine that is entrained in the skins. The beauty of the system is very simple to use, very clean, and it's very gentle. You'll never get crushing of seeds in this system. So here's a picture of the setup, and this was actually done last week. We got some Cabernet Sauvignon for South Africa to do some runs, and this actually is the pressing setup. So the unit on the left is the GOfermentor where it was fermented. You see that hose going in, that goes to the pressing tube. In this case, we've hooked up a pneumatic diaphragm transfer pump, and that is pumping the wine into a smart barrel liner, which is in the second container on the right side. So I'm going to show you now a short video of how this is all done and provide some commentary. I apologize for the fact that I'm missing on the picture, but there's some production issues here. So anyway, there I am. So the first thing you do after fermentation is remove the vent assembly. So here I am disconnecting the vent assembly. I'm going to put that away, and I'm going to cap it with a tri-clamp cap. So that port is now closed off. The next thing you'll see me do is actually open and disconnect the temperature sampling probe assembly. And that is located to the front of the bag. Okay, I'm still putting the clamp, there you go, that's the temperature assembly. I'm going to pull it out and I'm going to put it away. So the next thing we're going to do is take the press tube, which you see is draped over the control panel there, and we're going to insert it into that sampling port. There we go. And this goes all the way in. So it's going to go into the fermented must, and I'm going to push it down and clamp it to the upper assembly. And this is important because that clamp has to be put on very securely because it has to be a gas-tight fitting. Then I'm going to take the hose that goes to the inlet of my pump and connect it to the discharge from the press tube. Now this inlet hose is going to a flexible impeller electric pump, and it's going to pump the wine into the second container. As we start to pump up, you'll notice that it starts to first evacuate the gas in the headspace of the fermentation bag. And that's why you need a self-priming pump, and it's important this step occur, otherwise you will not be able to press properly. Now you can see we have wine coming out through the press tube, clean wine, no seeds, no skins, being going through the wine pump into the collection liner. Here's the same setup, but instead of the electric pump, we have put in the pneumatic diaphragm pump. If you have an air compressor, this is a much cheaper and much simpler way to do this whole pressing operation. You can buy one of these for about $900, and it's all you need. So that's how the pressing goes, and you saw it took just a few minutes to set up. So I want to compare a vertical bladder versus the GOfermentor. We're looking at a 1-ton fermentation batch. So in the vertical bladder press, the setup is quite extensive. It takes a couple of hours to clean the press, clean the hoses, pump, sanitize everything, clean the collection tank. So about 2 man-hours for that. And then typically you have to fill this press 3 times because the press is big enough to take a 1-ton must load. So you're going to fill it, press it, empty and clean the screen out, do it a second time, empty it out, do it a third time, empty it out. This typically takes a man-hour or so, each of these operations. And then you've got cleanup in the end to wash the press, wash the area, and wash the fermentation tank or macro bin, whatever you have. So, you know, we did this at a winery nearby, side by side, a few years ago, and it took about 10 man-hours. It took about 8 hours, basically the day, to process this 1-ton batch, and you might take a little less or longer depending on how efficient you are. In the GOfermentor, as you saw, it took me about 10 or 15 minutes to insert the press tube, connect the pump to the collection liner, and start it. And the free run came out in about 15 minutes or so. You know, I pressed the button there and just walked away. I'm not really spending any time watching it. And then when the free run was finished, I came and set it up to press the pumice. And that would take several cycles. Each cycle takes about 20 minutes. So it'll take about an hour for the machine to do 3 cycles, but you have to be there. It's fully automated. Once you press that press button, it automatically will do the 3 cycles. And at the end of that, it took maybe 15, 20 minutes to remove the pumice filled liner and get rid of it. And so total labor, less than an hour. Elapsed time, 1 to 2 hours for the whole thing. And last but not least, we don't use any water. They wash the regular system, takes a couple of 100 gallons of water, hosing everything down, washing it out. We don't use any water. So I'm going to show you now next how we take the pumice out and how it's disposed of. So first I open or push back that lower bottom drain because it's preventing the bag from being released so it can be pulled out. Then we put a lifting strap around the bag and snug it up so that we have a point to lift the bag out. In this case, we're using a forklift to pull the bag out. You can use a hoist, you can use an engine hoist, you can use any device where you can get a vertical lift out. I'm just making sure that thing is free and loose. I'm going to just pop the lid down so you can see better what's going on. And now we're going to raise it, and there you see, out comes the bag, a little slack is taken up. And it lifts, I guess it's about 200 pounds or so of pumice out of there. I'm going to be there easing it over the edge of the lip there. And now we just take it over to our compost pile. It's right back over there. And here I'm just going to cut the bag open to show you how this pumice looks like. And you can see that this is very dry. It's very friable. The skins are all discrete. There's really not much in here. We had a customer who took this material some years ago and put it through a hard press, and he got a couple of gallons out of it. Not worth the effort. You're going to get 160 gallons a ton. 2 gallons is not going to make much of a difference, and it's not the best fraction. You know, the free run is the real best fraction. If this were the best wine, I would say yes, it's worth extracting it, but there is no labor here. It took us nothing to do this. One-person job, no mess, no cleanup of any kind. So a couple of tips I want to show you. That when this bag inflates, when it presses the pumice out, it's very important that the liner stay vertical. If it starts to move forward, it will bang into the pole and it will get the press tube out of position. So this is why we insist that you fasten the pivot strap, and that's provided with the system. Instructions are in the manual how to actually tension it. But during punch operation, it will just remain loose. But during the pressing, it would be pulled taut as the bag rises. And this causes the whole liner to pivot towards the back. You see that curved arrow? That's what you want. You want to end up almost a vertical bag instead of a bag going in the forward direction. So the pivot strap is really critical to get a good press. The pumice that's left inside here is basically vacuum dry. It's like almost like a shrink wrap material down there. You see the bag is being kind of all shrunk over it by the vacuum from the pump. And it's quite dry. I showed you the video. You can see here that it's not a mushy material. It's quite dry. And our yields are very comparable to a regular press. 150, 170 gallons a ton. It depends quite a bit on the varietal and some other factors in how you do this, but they're quite reasonable yields. And as I said, they're done without any cost. There's no press to buy, to maintain. And remember, your press is doing nothing for 10 months of the year. It's just staring you in the face every time you walk in, and you wonder why you bought this elephant that just sits there for about 2 months. In our case, it's a bag, so when you're fermenting, you have a press, which costs you nothing. When you're not fermenting, you don't have anything to worry about. You can actually fold the containers up and put them outside. As you've seen before, the winery, our GOfermentor winery, just disappears off season. So anyway, that's our video for today. There's myself doing the pressing, and I like to point out this, I did this whole thing by myself. This is a one-person operation. And I'm here watching it pressing with my glass of wine and just watching the automation do its thing. So it really makes things very, very simple to operate. The quality is superb, and the convenience you can't beat. So I'm available for some questions. If not, then you can always watch the video later. Send us questions by email, whatever you find convenient. You can even call me. I rarely answer my phone, but if you're nice to the office people, they'll let you on through. So usually it depends on how many people are on board. It's sometimes difficult to get questions, especially today we don't have the live video working too well. But a couple of things I'd like to share with you. We now have got an official distributor in Europe. We have signed on Agrovin, which is a very well-known company in Europe and also all over the world. They are very interested in our innovation of the GOfermentor. They feel it ties in well to their innovative products that they sell all over the world. So now we are available to customers directly in Spain, in Italy, in France, and in Portugal. So this season, hopefully, we will see much more activity in the European framework. And so if you are calling from overseas or watching it from overseas, there is a contact number and email for Agrovin on our website, and you are free to contact them. We also have a distributor now in Western Canada, Bin 37, and they are also listed on our website if you are in that area. So we can now provide support. We don't have to ship stuff from the States directly, and they also provide service and support in local languages. So thank you very much for watching. Next week we're going to talk about labels. We're going to have fun with labels. We're going to talk about how wine labels work and what they do and what's supposed to be on them, and cola and how the government interacts with your labels. So we'll have a little fun next week. So till then, thank you very much. Goodbye.